Welcome to the first new extreme trial introduced in Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers, the Dancing Plague Extreme. This encounter drops item level 450 weapons, and also has a chance to drop a faded copy of What Angel Wakes Me, a Dancing Wing, the Fagwyber Trumpet Mount, the Titania Triple Triad card, and rewards each player with a King Totem for every kill, redeemable for item level 450 weapons in Yulmore for 10 totems each. This fight is relatively simple mechanically, and incredibly lax on the DPS check. The main factor will be preparation for the mechanics to come, knowing which player is going to do what and when. We first start by choosing positions around the 1 marker for a mechanic we'll discuss soon, 1 player at each cardinal and 1 player at each intercardinal. Note that melee should be prioritized for the cardinal slots for the sake of their uptime, and the main tank should always be in the north slot. Next we split into 2 groups of 4, 2 DPS, 1 tank, and 1 healer in each. This is also to determine how we will handle a mechanic later in the fight. We also mark players other than the tanks 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 for a further mechanic. This may seem a little overwhelming now, but we'll get into the reasoning for each of these soon. Finally, we choose our strategy for 2 further mechanics, which direction to rotate the final flame rune, and which direction to break tethers, but I'll go over these when we reach these mechanics. Titania will start the encounter by casting Bright Sabbath, dealing medium damage to the entire party. This is followed by her first cast of Phantom Rune. This cast can either be a point-blank circle AoE, or a room-wide AoE with a safe spot in her hitbox. To determine which, check whether her wings are very large and glowing purple, indicating the point-blank AoE, or if there is a yellow circle at her feet, indicating the safe zone will be in her hitbox. This first Phantom Rune cast will always be the point-blank AoE, and being struck will give vulnerability up in addition to Hysteria. Titania's next cast is Miss Rune. This will summon 4 puddles around Titania just like in the normal encounter, but will also summon 4 puddles in the corners of the arena. Players will move to a puddle based on the spot they chose prior to beginning the fight. If any of the puddles are unoccupied at the end of their countdown, a Spirit of the Duad will be summoned and the unoccupied puddle will vanish. It's extremely important that later in the fight the 4 puddles nearest Titania are preserved. If you have the misfortune of allowing any Spirit of the Dew to spawn, quickly burn them down before they self-destruct with a cast of Complete Combustion, granting damage down stacks and dealing high damage. 2 of these detonations will be a wipe. Following the end of the countdown, Titania will begin casting Flame Rune. The parties need to regroup at the group markers they chose at the start of the fight. We chose to place 1 at the puddle west of Titania and 2 at the puddle east of her. After Flame Rune's cast, both healers will be marked with a damage split marker. This damage is survived by using the puddle's Fire Resistance Up buff. When the hit lands, the puddle will be destroyed and players will receive the Fire Resistance Down 2 debuff, making a further hit from Flame Rune unsurvivable. Divination Rune is a large conal AoE directed at the tank. Next we will see our first chain of Brambles cast. This spell tethers all of the DPS each to a healer or tank, and after a short delay begins dealing damage and giving stacks of vulnerability up. The general rule of thumb is healers and tanks break their tethers to the north, DPS to the south. However, to break the tethers it's necessary to run to opposite corners, so a direction must be specified for this first cast. My group chose to have the tanks and healers run northeast and the DPS run southwest. Don't stop running until the tether is broken, as it will kill you very quickly. Pop Sprint during the cast if you like, you won't be needing it for any other mechanic. Titania will now return to the center of the arena and cast her second Phantom Rune, this time in a donut AoE pattern with a safe area inside of her hitbox. Being hit will give players vulnerability up and knock them back a large distance. Titania will now transition phases by casting Midsummer Night's Dream. This will change the castle to a forested area and remove the railing from the sides of the arena. When Titania says this may tingle a bit, she will tether to a nearby player. After a short delay, she will strike this player with a medium circle AoE called Thunder Rune that deals damage and grants lightning resistance down 2. She will repeat this cast 5 times, and being struck twice without invulnerability cooldowns will result in death. We chose to handle this by having the off-tank pick up the initial tether and take it to the 2 marker on the east side of the arena, followed by the players we designated 1 through 5 before starting the encounter. The tether will not always jump just by running through it, so exercise patience and be sure the tether has transferred before moving away. Some groups choose to have the off-tank take 1 hit, and then use an invulnerability cooldown to take 2 more before passing the tether for the final 3 hits. This is a fine strategy too, but I think it's far better for every player to take the opportunity to learn how to deal with this mechanic themselves. After Lightning Rune, Titania will begin casting Fey Light on the main tank. This is a high magic damage conal AoE that strikes 3 times. The damage can be shared, but we chose to have our Dark Knight living dead through the 3 hits, followed by a benediction from our White Mage after the 3 hits landed. Titania's next cast will be Growth Rune, summoning 2 star column AoEs in opposite corners of the arena. Players will quickly need to identify the corners these AoEs have spawned in, because this cast will be immediately followed by a chain of Brambles cast. Players will need to run to the corners that are not occupied by the Growth Runes to safely break these AoEs, before running back in to avoid a quick death from the Growth Runes. Remember the rule of DPS south, tanks and healers north, and it should be easy to identify which direction to break your chains in. As soon as the Growth Runes have cleared out of the way, the tank should face Titania away from the party, as she will soon cast another Divination Rune Cleave. Titania will next cast Frost Rune, summoning Shiva-style circle AoEs starting in the center and traveling around the arena. Identify where the last AoE will hit and stand there until the center AoE goes off, then quickly occupy the position of the first. Immediately after Frost Rune, the entire party will be marked with small circle AoEs called Uplift, spread out to avoid overlapping, giving melee players the space closer to Titania. Next, Titania will cast another Phantom Rune. This will hit the entire arena except the inside of her hitbox, and this will knock you back a long distance if you're hit, so be prepared. Titania will then become untargetable and the first ad phase will begin. Mustard Seed, Puck, and Peas Blossom will join the fray, and Titania's power gauge will begin building up to 100. Note that letting these ads get too close to one another will buff them, so the tank should be mindful of that. Mustard Seed will target random players with multiple conal AoEs before eventually enraging and casting Whispering Wind. It does not need to be picked up by a tank, but the party besides the tanks should burn down this ad first. Mustard Seed will always spawn on the east side of the arena. Spread for Peas Blossom's AoEs and shift your attention to burning Puck down second, as he has a tank buster called Pummel that gives stacks of blunt resistance down. Taking a Pummel at 2 stacks will likely be lethal. Puck will always spawn to the north of the arena. Finally, players will kill the west ad Peas Blossom. This ad also needs to be tanked as it has a tank buster called Hard Swipe. My group had the main tank pick up Puck and the off tank pick up Peas Blossom, but I'm sure other configurations will be fine too. After all 3 ads are defeated, Titania will cast Love and Idleness, returning all 3 ads in a much larger form. We will kill these in the same order, and the tanks will pick up the same mobs as in the first ad phase. The ad's AoEs will be much larger now, and will come out closer together, making things seem a bit chaotic. First, 4 players will be marked with large circle AoEs while Mustard Seed casts its conal AoEs. Avoid overlapping. Immediately after these AoEs resolve, a player will be marked with a split damage marker. You can assign a spot for players to share this damage, but my party typically just meets at the front of whichever ad we happen to be killing when this marker comes out. The next mechanic players will deal with is Chain of Brambles with yet another twist. Vines will appear, and after a short delay will slam down onto the arena in the direction they are facing. 1 south quadrant and 1 north quadrant will always be behind the vines and therefore safe, so this is the direction you'll want to break your chains in, remembering DPS will always go south, healers and tanks north. However, Puck is also targeting the center of the arena with a knockback AoE called Puck's Rebuke. You will be tempted to start running and break these chains, but if you position close to the AoE without being hit by it, the knockback will do all the work for you of breaking your chains. Verify your chain is broken after the knockback, and then quickly position to dodge Mustard Seed's conal AoEs. Next, 2 players will be marked with large circle AoEs, while a 3rd player is marked with a damage split marker. The large AoE should move away from the front of the current ad, while the rest of the party stacks up in front of it. Layering one of the large circle AoEs onto the split damage marker will easily cause a wipe. AoEs will continue to be thrown out until either the final ad is defeated or Titania reaches 100 power and enrages. Titania will cast her ultimate, Being Mortal, dealing high damage before entering her final phase. Titania will now cast her second Mist Rune, once again summoning the puddles we dealt with at the start of the encounter. However, this Mist Rune will immediately be followed by a Phantom Rune. Determine whether the safe area is in or out, and move to your respective puddles immediately after before the countdown finishes. Immediately after resolving your puddles, players will report to their groups at 1 and 2 for Flame Rune. However, Titania will also cast a Growth Rune at this point. These star column AoEs will spawn either at the north and south cardinals, or at the west and east. Because we are stacked on the west and east puddles, if the Growth Runes also spawn west and east, we rotate clockwise to the next puddle. If the Growth Runes spawn north and south, we remain in position. At this point, Titania will repeat mechanics you've already seen until she enrages. Now that you have all the information, it's time to farm some shiny butterfly weapons.